Dear ladies and gentlemen, good morning everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Tallinna Sadam's Investor Conference webinar about financial results and company's activities in the second quarter and 6 months of 2019. Today we are hosted by the Chairman of the Management Board, Valdo Kalm, and Chief Financial Officer, Marko Raid. After the presentation, we will open the floor for questions. If you would like to use the opportunity to ask questions, please use the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. Your questions will be answered after the presentation. Please, Valdo, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. And I would like to start with highlights from Q2. We had first general meeting of shareholders, and there was a decision about the dividend payment in June, and then maybe such a the most important event was the new Ropax ship or line between Muuga and Vuosaari by Eckerö line. At the same time, also Tallink opened the passenger service from Muuga, and I would say that the start was very good for both companies, and I would like to say that the trend is good. There is definitely the segment for such a service, passenger with the cars. Therefore, that was very successful launch. Also, we got growth in dry bulk due to the new terminal called PK, and we are happy with such a strong partner what we now have in Muuga, because there are a lot of different dry bulk and general cargo. Then there are some proceedings started also in Q2 between SLK and Väinämeren Liinid, also with coal terminal. As you see, here are claims, and we're following the process. We don't see big risk for us, but we have to proceed. Some increased investments due to the construction of passenger terminal D, and also there are some investment in Paldiski South Harbour, and some investment for a radio road where we are co-financing partner with city government. We got corporate social responsibility silver quality label, and also maybe more such a famous or well-known, let's call it Sabre reward for IPO communication projects and process. Trends, next slide shows trends by business segments. In Q2, good news is that we saw recovering on passenger numbers. If you remember, then on Q1 we have had lot of docks with different operators, but Q2 show quite the good numbers, even some increase in Helsinki route. On cargo side, we also had recovery on liquid bulk volumes and growth in dry bulk. On ferry business, we had additional ferry for the summer ordered by the state, and we had quite a busy Q2 on ferry business so far. Everything looks good. We're keeping service levels, although there is a continuous growth of passengers and cars. Quite a heavy summer, honestly. And then under the other segment, Botnica started work in Baffinland. Also, everything is like a planned. The agreement with good conditions works well. Therefore, they are already working there. Next slide describes a little bit more precisely our cargo volumes. Q2 we had plus 4% increase, mainly due to the increase on dry bulk. 6 months we see quite a flat development on volumes. And on passenger numbers, tiny increase, mainly supported by Tallinn-Helsinki route. And then still on 6 months, we see decrease due to the Q1 docks what we had. But yeah, Q2 made quite a good recovery on passenger numbers. Cruising business doing well, like we planned actually. I would like to give floor to Marko to describe the financials.
Hello. On the next slide, we have the financial results for group. Just to highlight on a very overall level that the second quarter was very positive and has helped us with a recovery as the first quarter was a bit weaker and we had several minuses in revenue and EBITDA. So together with the second quarter, the 6-month results are at or a little bit above previous year's results. So on revenues, we saw a slight increase on second quarter, even though 6-month figure still has 1.3% minus. That's mainly due to the docking of passenger vessels that took place on the first quarter, and we have not yet fully recovered from that negative impact. Even though the revenue has remained a little bit below last year, the adjusted EBITDA is flat. So we have decreased a little bit of our costs, and second quarter was especially positive in terms of EBITDA generation. One major item to point out is income tax, because last year we had extra high dividend payment during the IPO or following the IPO process. The income tax this year is significantly lower. It's 6 million compared to 26 million last year. So just as a reminder, in Estonia, the income tax is connected to the volume of dividends actually paid out. So this year the dividend payment was lower, and therefore the income tax from the dividend is also lower, and this is impacting mainly the bottom line figure, profit loss for the period, where in second quarter last year we had a loss of 14 million, and this year, second quarter, we had a 7 million profit. And this difference mainly is from the change in income tax. But overall, as well, we have a little bit of growth in the profit line due to the decrease in our costs. As promised, investments have kicked up. doubled compared to the last year, first 6 months, and we hope that the second half year 2019 will show even more pickup in investments. So we are working with several projects, but still aiming at 25 to 30 million in total for the year. So also this year some investments have been delayed, but we expect them to then continue with them in next year, or as quickly as possible with the procurement proceedings. And main investment objects have been the Terminal D investment, as Valdo already said, and really the development around the Old City Harbour. Cash flow also reflects the same main activities I already discussed. Maybe to point out on the first line, cash from operating activities, there is a decrease of 7 million, but that's mainly due to the fact that in 2018 part of the dividend was paid out in December, and corresponding income tax on dividends was paid out in January 2019. Thus, it has impacted the cash flow, even though it's last or 2018 year's transaction, because the tax itself was paid out in January. So that's the main difference in the operating activities. Otherwise, it's quite flat, as you can figure from the financial results. Cash used in investing activities has increased due to the increased investments, and those two make up the change for the free cash flow. Otherwise, net debt has also increased. That's mainly due to the cash changes in the cash balance. Last year we had a stronger cash balance left. Not all the dividends had been paid out by the end of 6 months. This year we have already completed the dividend payment, so this has reflected the net debt. On the right hand side on the graph you can see the debt position itself. The gross debt has not changed much, decreasing by 4 million euros from the year-end figure. That's payback of existing loans and bonds. So major contributor for the net debt has been change in cash balance. Last slide is about results on segmental level, and starting from the second quarter we see quite stable revenue figures, small decrease in passenger harbors and a slight increase in ferry revenues, giving us quite a flat total. Positive news is that adjusted EBITDA has increased in all segments, and especially we are happy about the ferry segment, where we see continuous activities to increase efficiency now that we are up and running. And for the 6-month figures, we still have in revenue decline mainly in passenger harbors due to the docking of several vessels in the first quarter. which we have not recovered, or from which we have not recovered. Other segments are more stable, a little bit of decrease in cargo harbors, also from the first quarter, and ferry and other segments have had a growth in revenues, and EBITDA is also stable or growing, and only slight decreases in cargo harbors. But now, as we have the new Vuosaari line calling to Muuga, we hope to have a positive impact from that on the third and fourth quarter. With that, we end our presentation and are looking forward to any of the questions.
Thank you, Marko. And now we will proceed with the questions, starting with the questions received in advance. I would like to remind you that you can send in questions using the question box on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll be now given a couple of minutes to submit in the questions.
All right, we got some questions in advance, and the first one is, what is the EBITDA impact for the second half of this year from new vessels on Muuga-Vuosaari line? We can say just very roughly, it's about half a million impact for EBITDA.
For half a year.
For half a year, very roughly. Then second question about the outlook for liquid bulk business for the second half of this year. As we already noticed from last year and continuing this year, it's fluctuating from quarter to quarter, and it's not so stable, therefore difficult to predict, and therefore, of course, we're working very heavily with different operators and projects. But yeah, it's still very difficult to predict. Third question, expected EBITDA impact from other investments and changes. Honestly, we can't comment just now any big impact. There are some ideas on shipping business, but yeah, it's a little bit too early to comment. And then the fourth question, when will there will be something more concrete on real estate plans, and what happening on this area? We are with all these real estate area, I'm talking about the 16 hectares around the old city harbor. We are in a detailed planning process. Just remind you that we divided it to the 5 areas, and from these 5, the first one is open for the detailed planning. That means the detailed planning process started. With other 4, we went through for different commissions in Tallinn city government, and we hope that during the autumn there will be some decisions of opening the detailed planning on some other areas. And then with this detailed planning, definitely it takes some, as we described already, year or 2 when we can go for more concrete contracts. At the same time, honestly, there are interest for this area. We already keeping touch and sharing the information with potential investors. But interest is there.
Okay, we'll take some questions that we got now during Valdo's answering the one we got beforehand. So there's one, the first one. Please describe your outlook for second half 2019 in terms of cargo flows by different cargo types.
Okay, I can answer. First of all, we see growth possibilities on dry bulk and ro-ro, and that's not only due to the new cargo line, but that's the trend because of new terminal PK and just recently we heard another news that there was acquisition of Stevies. That's also good news for the port. We know these investors. We're working with these companies in Paldiski. Therefore, we hope there will be another possibilities and new possibilities for the growth. On liquid bulk, we already described that it's very difficult to predict, and all in all, we would like to see stable or with some tiny growth by the end of the year. Second question: how do fees agreed with PK Terminal owner compared to your average?
PK Terminal has basically the same fees or similar fees that the other operators for dry bulk have. So it's comparable, and in overall, if you talk about cargo business, then a dry bulk tends to be the revenue per ton tends to be a little bit lower than it is for liquid bulk, for example. But the difference has been decreasing due to the heavy discounts in liquid bulk and increased competition. But otherwise, they are at similar levels with other existing operators. Then we have a question that in the press release, the board says that we expect to achieve the profit target set for the current year. Could you please specify what is the target in terms of EBITDA and net profit? Unfortunately, we cannot and we do not publish our targets. But the aim of the statement is to give assurance that we are internally on track in terms of the announced dividend policy, and we don't see any major threat at the moment in terms of achieving the targets that we have communicated, and these being related to the dividend policy. But we do not give our internal estimates or targets in terms of EBITDA and net profit.
Next question: do you feel any impact on passenger traffic from the reduced alcohol taxes so far in Q3? Yeah, it's too early to say, but there are some positive aspects, and this information comes more from operators. There are some positive aspects, but it's a bit too early to say. At least, as we already mentioned, on Q2 we had better traffic between Tallinn and Helsinki, and that bit continues on Q3 also.
Then there's next question: could you shed more light on the claims filed by former coal terminal operator? Yes, this claim actually is follow-up for their letter, which they sent us a year ago, where they presented the same claim that, in their opinion, the equipment that was on the territories of their building title area are worth some 22 million. We have our own opinions and expert opinions on that, and strongly disagree with this evaluation, and basically because we opposed that and did not agree with their evaluation. The bankruptcy administrators then just filed their claim into the court. So now we are just continuing this disagreement and discussion in the court, and as we have also published in the report, some of the assets or the loading equipment we have sold in open public tender. We have received some 2.6 million for that. So in our view, it's kind of hard to justify asking much more for that equipment. Of course, there's some additional assets like railways and storage areas, but their combined value, in our view, is quite far from this 22 million. So we are continuing this discussion. If there's a place for a mutually acceptable agreement, we will, of course, pursue that. But otherwise, we are defending our views and continue this discussion in court. And it's just not one claim, but there are several. It will be combined result of several different claims and different viewpoints. So it will take quite a lot of time to finalize this if it's going to be in the court. Yeah.
Next question: was there any process or progress achieved in joint efforts of the port and the line operators in boosting Tallinn's attractiveness? And then second question: have there been any discussion regarding fees charged by the port for their ship calls? Answer to the first question is that we really already on spring started some joint marketing activities together with passenger operators and also agencies from the state side. And even tomorrow we'll have a bigger meeting with some concrete action plan, mainly towards Finland, but we're planning to have same action plan towards Sweden and Russia also. Therefore, it's ongoing, and I guess we already have seen some effects, how to attract different segments. That's very important. On port fees, there are some developments. From the beginning of this year, we introduced environmental index. That means we will give discount for these ships who has the environmental index. And the second, we launched a new motivation system or port fee charging for container vessels what motivates to enter to our boards more recently?
We don't have any other discussions, ongoing discussions in terms of, for example, passenger ferries fee structure.
Yeah.
So this is expected to remain as it is for the current year, at least.
Correct.
At the moment, we don't have any such discussions. Then we have a question: what is realistic capex for 2019? This is a good question, and whatever answer I will give will be wrong because it's very hard to estimate. But we hope, as I said, that it's about 25 million, maybe around 30 million. But it depends on how the procurement processes go, and unfortunately. This is something we are unable to estimate in terms if someone files a complaint or not, in which case those processes are delayed, or if the prices come beyond our expected levels, then we also review our terms, and therefore, yes, it's hard to say, but I would estimate somewhere around 30 million.
How Botnica's revenue from this summer season compared to the last year respective revenues? Very generally saying it's not fixed yet, because usually there are some additional duties or jobs, but it's on a same level or a little bit higher, because we started earlier and we already got some additional tasks. Therefore,
yes,
stable or a little bit higher?
Stable or a little bit higher. The final result will depend on the ice conditions and how long the Botnica and the cargo vessels actually can operate on this Puffin Island. And otherwise, we have indexed our dues as well. So this has a little bit increased. So if the duration of the service is the same, we still have a little bit of increase, but we hope that the duration of the service will as well be a little bit higher, but that remains to be seen.
Thank you, Marko. It seems that all the questions have been answered, and if you don't have any more questions, then I would like to thank Marko and Valdo for the presentation and answers. And I would like to remind to all the listeners that the summary of the webinar, together with the presentation and link to the recording, will be made available in today's investor event announcement from Tallinna Sadam. You can also listen to today's recording directly from the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel on webinar playlist. Again, thank you, Marko and Valdo, for your time, and thank you, participants, for joining. We hope to meet you next time.